Wow, another semester of college finally completed. Can't believe I'm already a senior, but more importantly, now that I'm done with that, I can finally get back to work on working on these incredibly well-made and high-quality YouTube videos. I mean, yeah, sure, I was able to get out that Sonic Unleashed video and the Switch 2 one, but, those are just smaller side projects, not really meant to be all that important or anything. Hello, welcome back to Unbroken Glass, and I've decided that I am rebranding to a full-time Sonic and gaming drama YouTube channel. Hey there, welcome to the year 2025, where in spite of the world burning hotter and hotter, literally in some cases, I think I'm doing alright, or as best I can. Things are definitely going very well for the channel so far, anyway. Now, while it wasn't a smash hit success, I really did enjoy the creation of my seasonal mini-review compilations. It was a fun way to keep a public journal of sorts of what I got around to, what I liked, what I didn't like. It makes sense to continue it into this year, but I want to do things a little differently this time, make it feel a little less rigid, and you know what? I'm dropping the scores. You can find them on Twitter or Blue Sky if you're curious enough, I guess. I have about 20 things to talk about today, and I'm not really going to be going over them in any particular order. Whatever I think just flows naturally from one thing to the next. I understand this video is about a month and a half late, give or take, but you know what? That's not the worst gap. I've made you all wait for videos before. Enough wasting time, though. Let's get to work. I think a good place to start is the first thing I finished this year, and coincidentally, it is the best on this list thus far. Astrobot is a phenomenal platformer through and through, and maybe I'm just biased because Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 are some of my favorite games of all time, but I had such a wide smile on my face from start to finish that I could never wipe off. Not that I even wanted to. I played every single level, got every single bot, damn near 100%ed the whole thing pretty much. I had that great of a time with it. Now, I wouldn't say it's my favorite game of 2024, but it definitely deserved its big win at the Game Awards. If another PlayStation game absolutely had to win, I'm glad it was this one and not something like Ragnarok or Horizon Forbidden West. And best of all, we might actually get more games like it soon. Take a bow, Team Asobi. You have truly earned it. And that is just one of many games I've already played or plan to play this year. In fact, I have a goal. Last year, I went in with a list of 10 games I wanted to commit to finishing before the year ended. I got the idea from My Life in Gaming, a channel I've been a huge fan of since 2018. I'd highly recommend their videos if you are at all interested in retro gaming. Anyway, out of those 10, I managed to finish 3. Oops. So this year, I reevaluated it and went in with just 5 instead. Eco, Okami, Gravity Rush, Yakuza Kiwami, and at least one numbered Final Fantasy that I'd yet to finish. And so far, I've already knocked off 2 of those games, and it likely won't be long before the next. I bought Eco complete in box at a pawn shop back in 2023 for what seems to be below market price these days. I wouldn't start it proper until after finishing Shadow of the Colossus, but I didn't make it too far, even then. But after picking it up this year, I made it through almost the whole thing in a day, and I loved it. In fact, I'd even say I loved it more than Shadow of the Colossus, despite not being as technically impressive. Eco is a very simple puzzle game that may be very short, but man are those 5 to 6 hours memorable. Resident Evil 4 may have proved to me that escort missions can be enjoyable, but this game manages to be almost entirely an escort mission and still a great time. And it very likely would not have worked so well had you just been able to go it alone the whole time. Obviously, it makes the game stand out more, but it also helps to just feel like you're never alone. The 2 main characters might be stuck in a hopeless situation and unable to communicate each other, but, actions speak louder than words or something, I guess? Kinda sucks the Bluepoint didn't get to make a modern remake of this game too, because it absolutely deserves that treatment. If you can overcome some dated early PS2 controls, you'll find a supremely unique adventure worth your time. Which brings us to the other game, any numbered Final Fantasy I'd yet to finish for the first time. That would encompass everything except 6, 7, 8, and 15, so I had quite a lot of options for which FF game in question to choose. Maybe something really beloved like 9 or 10, maybe something less popular like 5 or 12, maybe Well, okay, 4 works, I guess. I've actually owned 4 for a while now, almost 4 years. Wait a second. I played a fair bit of the PSP version, but lost my save file and gave up. In the year 2025, though, we have the Pixel Remaster, meaning I can play it on both my PC and Steam Deck. And I actually managed to beat it really quickly, too. The verdict? I really should have finished this before 6. Yeah, I wasn't really that big a fan. I mean, it's good, you know, it's alright. It's just really basic and boring by today's standards, and I get that it was ahead of its time, but I just didn't click with the gameplay or story at all. It's pretty easy until a random difficulty spike at the climax, and was just very in one ear and out the other. I can see why a lot of people would consider this their favorite Final Fantasy game, and it has a lot of historical significance in the series and shifted the direction closer to what would eventually give us some of the best Final Fantasy games. We very likely wouldn't have gotten 6, my favorite in the series, without 4, but I also can't see it as much more than a weaker version of 6. Maybe the 3D remake can change my mind, maybe not. So, while 4 may have been a bit disappointing, at least it wasn't bad. On the topic of historically significant things I liked but didn't absolutely love, the original Evil Dead. I mean, I did have a good time watching it. I wouldn't say it's aged too terribly. It just kind of feels like a prototype for something much greater. I guess that's what Evil Dead 2 is for, but I still haven't seen it yet. Still though, the technical prowess of this movie cannot be understated. The technique of enemy POV is iconic, and AI bros will never be able to recreate that magic. Obviously, this isn't my first foray into Sam Raimi movies, but I probably should watch more of his stuff at some point. Now, while there are a lot of great things on this list, a lot of them I don't have much to say about, so let's lightning round it really quickly. Wallace and Gromit Vengeance Most Foul is a pretty good follow-up to a childhood classic. I'm pretty glad my mom showed me and my siblings these movies growing up, because even I got to believe once the moon was made of cheese. It wasn't my personal favorite of the Best Animated Picture nominees, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Inglourious Basterds is the 3rd Quentin Tarantino movie, or 4th I guess, that I've seen, and it's pretty damn great too. I'm so glad we got rid of all the Nazis and there's none of them left at all, am I right fellas? It Takes Two was a really fun experience. I'm glad I got to, well, experience. Me and a friend played through the whole thing and had a great time, in spite of her not being as used to 3D platformers as I am. I will confess I was drunk during some of the sessions, so I'm not sure if that affected anything, but whatever, it was still pretty great. Too bad I'm not married. Gung Ho is interesting because it was the first time I had to watch a movie as part of a college assignment. The assignment was cancelled, but I was curious enough to check it out on my own time from the comfort of my own home, and it was actually pretty enjoyable. Definitely feels like a time capsule now, but Michael Keaton's performance is pretty timeless. And hey, if my international business professor says it's a great job illustrating the conflicts with doing business with other countries and cultures, I'll take her word for it. Unfortunately, not everything on this list can be a winner. Sonic Racing Crossworlds is coming soon, and I gotta admit, I'm pretty excited for it. Even at their most uninteresting, Sonic Racing games are a guilty pleasure for me, so why not start marathoning them all in preparation for Crossworlds? I managed to get all the way to Sonic R before giving up at the first course. So how are Drift 1 and 2 then? Sonic Drift 1. It's fucking trash. Sonic Drift 2. It's not that bad, I guess. Just kinda mid. It's about as good as Super Mario Kart, all things considered. On the topic of 8-bit Sonic games, though, let me ask you, have you ever finished Sonic the Hedgehog? No, not that one. Or that one. Or even that one. This one. Sonic 1 8-bit is interesting. It's so normal. Like, I'm sorry, this is not a Sonic game. This is a regular 8-bit platformer starring a guy who happens to look like Sonic. Does it hold up on its own merits, though? Well, I mean, the first 2 zones are fun. Everything else sucks! I didn't enjoy this one very much. It's pretty mid compared to the Genesis original, and I doubt I'll ever go back to it, but interesting experiment, I guess. So, is Drift 1 the worst thing on this list? No! Awards season is over, and while I didn't see any of the nominations for Best Picture, I'm happy for those whose favorite won. Correction, I didn't see any of them prior to the nominees themselves being announced. Because after all the hoopla surrounding them started, there was one particular black sheep that most people seemed to be unhappy with, and it was enough to pique my morbid curiosity just enough to check it out. That's right, I'm talking about Harold and the Purple Crayon, Emilia Perez. Yeah. Is it as bad as everyone said? Of course it is. Why would I even bother hiding that? It's terrible, it's boring, the music sucks, it's pretentious, it's overstayed its welcome. I have nothing left to add to the discussion surrounding this movie because everything has already been discussed. And now that awards season is over, any discussion and relevancy it had left has vanished. So I can't even talk about it without feeling like I'm just parroting everyone else. I will end it on this, though. I don't think it's terrible that so many well-respected and beloved figures like this movie. It's not a worthless movie, after all. It's technically sound, and has a few scenes I thought were actually good. And hey, it isn't even the worst movie of 2024 I've seen. Okay, that's enough talking about Emilia Perez now. Let's let it slip away, like an old racist tweet. How about an actually good movie that won an Oscar? Alright, maybe I'm biased because my entire life I've been surrounded by cats, those absolute devils, but Flo was so beautiful, it made me tear up multiple times. Am I basic and easy to please? Of course I am, but it is what it is, and there's no denying that it is a thoroughly beautiful film. I mean that in terms of both the actual animation quality, with a truly stunning painterly aesthetic that is incredible from start to finish, and in the storytelling, the very silent storytelling. I mean, yeah, it makes sense there's not a single line of dialogue, they're all animals, and yet it tells a truly beautiful story that doesn't miss a beat. The 5 main characters manage to have a lot more of a personality than even many human characters from other things on this list. Overall, I would highly recommend giving it a watch if it sounds like something that would be appealing to you. As I briefly said last year, I love Blade Runner, both the original and 2049, but were you even aware that Blade Runner was based on a novel from the 1960s? I mean, you probably were, considering Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is basically one of the granddaddies of cyberpunk fiction. And it's wild to me just how misunderstood that genre is, because you read this and you're not gonna think, wow, this is so cool. You read it and think, wow, is this what an existential crisis feels like? Maybe I still prefer the 1982 film, but this was without question worth every bit of my time. And if you're at all a fan of Blade Runner and haven't read this, I highly recommend it. Before I get to these last few things, though, I think it's important to go over the rewatches and replays, and the things I started but didn't finish. I'll lightning round it again, don't worry. I was not appreciating Metal Gear Solid 2 as much as I really should have been prior to now. It is a phenomenal game. I already said my piece on Sonic Unleashed, which definitely paid off, but if you missed it, I like it a lot more this time around. And Godzilla 1954 is an amazing movie, especially if watching it while blackout drunk. Alright, the unfinished. Bloodborne is phenomenal so far, but I need to take a bit of time off from it. I picked up a few episodes of Kimi no Todoke with a friend after a several-year-long break from it. It's slow, but cute. Thanks to a friend, I got early access to an indie party game called Lunars, and it's pretty fun. Until then, seemed like it would be right up my alley, but I don't know, I think I might need to give it more time to click. Same with Tsukihime, but I'll definitely have to get back to that one soon for reasons that are about to be apparent. Resident Evil 5 with my brother was a good time. I can't wait to try more of it. Snatcher is literally just a Blade Runner ripoff, but it's cool because Kojima made it. And lastly, Balatro. I think it might just be a little addicting. And that's all I can remember for now. So, like I said earlier, Astrobot is the best thing on the list in my opinion, but I've saved the most impactful by far for last. I am not a big visual novel fan. I could never see myself reading a truly massive one under most circumstances. I have 95 hours logged in Fate Stay Night. Everyone makes a big deal about how hard it is to get into Fate, but it turns out it's actually not that hard if you have enough motivation or the right mindset. Yes, asking people to read something that is longer than all of Lord of the Rings is a colossal order, but I implore you that if you can pull it off, it will be one of the most rewarding things you can possibly experience. you don't have to worry about what anime to watch first or what spin-offs to consider. Just read it. And above all else, never play Grand Order. I repeat, never play Grand Order. So how did I do it? How did I overcome such a Herculean task as this one? Well, it's simple. It's just really fucking good. Say what you will about what the Fate franchise has become, but you can't deny that the roots of it all, that original VN, is considered a stone-cold classic for good reason. It took me nearly 2 months to roll credits on the final ending, but I stayed hooked throughout nearly all of it. I almost want to do a whole video about it, but it's also really difficult for me to orchestrate my thoughts on the whole thing well enough. But to give a brief summation of each route with my opinion directly after finishing each one, Fate route. I absolutely loved this one. Saber is easily my favorite character in the game, and it had me gripped from start to finish, even in spite of being over 30 hours in length, and a few scenes leaving me kinda bored. In addition, I wasn't really a big fan of Ilya in this route, but the ending left me so satisfied in a bittersweet manner that I almost didn't want to play the other 2 routes. Not right away, anyway. Unlimited Blade Works. I didn't like this one as much as the Fate route, but I also really liked it. Rin and Archer were great, and I liked what they did with the other characters who didn't get as much of a chance to shine in the first route. It kinda sucks that this is by far the most popular one, because it means so many people didn't get a chance to experience Fate first. And UBW really works best as a follow-up to Fate, definitely not a standalone experience. One thing I actually preferred here, though, were the central themes and how they tie into the plot, struggling with oneself as an ideal. If that doesn't really make sense to you, just think of this route like a hard mode for Shiro. Which I guess makes Heavens feel ultra nightmare, and I mean that in more ways than one. Ha ha ha! I wanna heal, I wanna feel. God, where do I even begin? At the time of writing, I finished this the night before, and I was still trying to let it sink in. I think it is absolutely the best route, but it's also just depressing. It's almost difficult to read at times because of how dark it can get. It's brutal, upsetting, hopeless even. Every time I try to think about it now, I can barely organize my thoughts. I almost cry. It works so incredibly well as a finale to the whole package. The status quo gets shaken up so heavily. You get answers to questions you didn't even know you wanted an answer to. And then the climax and the ending. I probably shouldn't get into it much because of massive spoilers. I hate to ruin things for you. But the biggest surprise for me, though, was Ilya. She went from being one of my most disliked characters to being in my top 3. She ended up being in the center of one of my absolute favorite scenes in the whole game. Actually, no, my single favorite scene in the whole game. I better save further ramblings for another time, though. But before I move on from Heavensfeel, I gotta talk about the Ufotable movie trilogy. I wasn't gonna give these a watch, but a friend was interested in checking them out since he'd seen Zero and UBW, but not this one, so I figured it was a good opportunity to sample a bit of how Fate has been adapted into an anime in different ways over the years. Honestly, though, I'm kind of indifferent to these. I think they hold up well enough on their own as movies, but as adaptations, they start to fall apart. And that was apparent to me the moment I realized a lot of Ilya's scenes were either cut back or just cut out. And with a higher focus of making the action scenes longer and as flashy as possible, I feel like the priorities were less about making a proper adaptation of Heavensfeel, and more about making a highlight reel of iconic scenes from throughout the story. And while those were really cool to see animated in overly chaotic fashion, I don't really like this compromise because to me, Heavensfeel is the more subtle moments, not just the high spectacle ones. It reminds me a little of the Berserk Golden Age trilogy. Not to say it misses the point that hard, but it was kind of heartbreaking to see my favorite scene in the game almost lose any impact because Ilya was nowhere near well established enough for it to work. Maybe I'm being a bit too biased and unfair though. They were given the Herculean task of fitting a 30-plus hour story into just 3 2-hour movies, and with a different perspective, I think they can be really great, and it does have a few unique qualities that it can call its own. I can't say I plan to watch the other route adaptations anymore unless a new one somehow happens, and maybe I'll check out Dean's Day Night out of curiosity one day. But did you really think I'd stop there with Fate? No, the gates have been unlocked. I can check out damn near anything now. Of course, starting with Fate Stay Night's sequel, Hollow Ataraxia, which I read using the brand new remaster that hasn't released yet. Of course, starting with Fate's prequel, Fate Zero, which in another timeline probably could have been my introduction to Fate. Watching it though, I really cannot see how people can understand a lot of Zero without having read at least a few hours of the Fate route. I am curious though, what is it like going into this without knowing how it ends? I started episode 1 and immediately felt a strong sense of dread creep over me, because just like a lot of other prequels such as Star Wars Episode 3, the Golden Age arc of Berserk, and FF7 Crisis Core, there's an interesting perspective you get when you go in knowing how it will end, or more specifically, how badly it will end. Weirdly enough though, I think watching this after reading Stay Night did more harm than good for my opinion on it, and I'm in no way saying it's bad. I did in fact think it was pretty good, but it is also pretty far removed from what I enjoy so much about the VN, a greater focus on the actual battle than building up the characters involved in the battle. That's not to say Zero has bland characters, or that all of Fate Stay Night's characters were fleshed out, but none of Zero's cast quite hits the same heights as the best of Stay Nights, with two exceptions, Ryder and Waver. Kiritsugu may technically be the protagonist of the story, but I'd argue Ryder and Waver fit that role even better. They're by far the best part of the series and even carry some of the best episodes in both seasons. So while Zero might not come close to any of the routes in Stay Night for me, I'd say it's well worth watching. It's pretty grim at points though. I might need something a bit more lighthearted after watching it all. Today's menu for the Emiya family. Yeah, that'll do. I really liked this. It's simple, but it's short, sweet, and all-around cozy. Maybe there's even some good cooking advice to be found. The fact that it's so character-focused makes me even more excited to try Hollow Ataraxia, since it's basically just 90% slice-of-life character interactions. Of course, I do plan to check out the overwhelming amount of other Fate media. Maybe I'll consume a bunch of it like I did with Ys last year. Or maybe I'll burn out immediately, who knows. Maybe more Type Moon is the key though. Tsukihime, Mihoyo, all 7 Kara no Kyokai movies. At least one of those is bound to show up next time. Anyway, I'm still not sure how much I can convince you to give the Fate Stay Night visual novel a fair shot, but if you do consider it, I mean, it's only $20 to $30, and considering how many quality hours I got out of it,
I'll make that deal. How about you bitch? You make that deal?
I'd make that deal.
I don't blame you. Damn good deal.
that does it for today's video. Thank you very much for giving it a watch to the end, no less. Y'all have a good one, and take care.